Welcome back. I'm John E. This is Kevin Kogan, and again, this is another edition of the Mayhay Classroom, where we are talking more about westward expansion. And the good thing about getting my buddy to teach 8th grade is that he's able to get another set of eyes on something. And after looking at westward expansion a couple of times, he came up with these 4 R's that I have stolen and have given myself credit for, except for this particular instance. But
wasn't even mine.
Did you find it
on the World Wide Web somewhere, man? Come on.
Really? Okay.
Come on. So I think this is an easy, like they call these like a mnemonic device.
Yeah.
To remember the impact that westward expansion has on Native Americans, starting with the first R of relocation. Native Americans were in many cases forcibly moved off of their land onto area the United States government set aside for them called reservations. Now, that alone kind of gives my kids some trouble because they think that reservations is one of the R's, and I never take that away from them if they mess that up. Well, then after we've set aside land for the Native Americans, once the United States government realized that that land still had value to us, usually in the forms of raw materials or gold and silver, we then repossessed that land. And if you watch one of our earlier videos, that phrase Indian giver. Because the United States would give something to the Native Americans and then take it back when we realized we still needed it. Then we tried to reform. Reform means to change. We wanted to make the Native Americans more civilized, air quotes because it's almost like being sarcastic as we stated in a previous video, tried to make them more Americanized. And then kind of the last R is like the proverbial straw that breaks the camel's back. After being forced off the land that they owned, after then being told they have to move again and again and again, and after having their children taken from them and sent to become Americanized, they just snap.
They do.
And shortly after the Civil War, and even before the Civil War, a series of conflicts that become known as the Indian Wars are fought between the United States military and various Native American tribes throughout the Great Plains and the Southwest.
But in particular, the one that gets attention, and it's pretty much because in this particular battle, at Custer's Last Stand is what it became known as, he pretty much gets decimated at this particular battle, and this was a very, very short-lived victory for them. When it came
I just want to go back to this, this has just jumped out at me, because I always bring this up to my students. It's like, hey, 1492, why does that year stick out? Because, that's when Columbus sailed the ocean blue.
Yep.
True. And Native Americans controlled everything of North America. This is only showing what is the lower 48 states. And by 1790, the formation of the new United States Constitution, the 13 original states, then by 1830, the Louisiana Purchase, and this, that. And then by today, this is all the land that's left reserved for Native Americans. What was once an entire continent at their possession.
I mean, you look over here, it's not like you're going to run into Native Americans on the East Coast. You're not going to see just 2 Native Americans just chilling out together.
Yeah.
It's just, because pushed back, this map.
Some of my students do bring up the Shinnecock Reservation here on Long Island, which is an area set aside for the Shinnecock Native Americans. And it's to think that even then, the Native Americans didn't own the land. They never viewed land as something that could be owned.
The view of ownership and land and everything, it belonged to everybody.
Something that could not be owned.
Right.
So, just,
Yeah. I mean, which, when you look at, I thought I was going somewhere with it. Apparently it wasn't. Which brings us back then to, Custer's Last Stand, where, they have this great, intense victory over the United States Army, and Custer, by the way, graduated last in his class at West Point, from what I recall.
Yeah.
But
you call people who graduate last from medical school?
Doctor.
You call them doctor.
Yeah. Custer,
Chief Sitting Bull,
one
of the great icons of American folklore.
Yes.
Really, because of his resistance. Anytime you see people who want to resist, he's usually one of the people they'll always bring up. In fact, there's a Rage Against the Machine song, The Renegades of Funk, and Chief Sitting Bull is brought up in that song as one of these people who is considered a renegade, one who doesn't like to do what they're told.
Now, with this particular battle, when we look at Custer and Sitting Bull, right, one of the things that came to this battle, let me just show you the terrain because they got some beautiful pictures here of this. So this is the terrain that we're actually talking about. Fairly flat, maybe hilly in certain situations. But what Custer was going to decide to do, which is this mistake, was that he kind of divided up his guys, which was the mistake. Now, waiting for him was this Native American group, and at this point, Sitting Bull had days or weeks of this vision leading up to this of a great Indian victory, and this was it. So, throw in a couple of things. They're fighting this defensively. You're fighting your own home, right? And when you're fighting for your own land or for your own home, you fight like a maniac with nothing to lose. You kick, you scratch, you bite, you do whatever you can. Put in the fact that now Sitting Bull told you that there is going to be a big battle and we're going to win. They took visions very seriously, where it's like if it happened in a vision, then therefore it was going to happen. So you're already going into this battle.
It's prophetic. Yeah.
Right, like you're gonna win. So you combine that, with the way they feel about their homeland and the Native American, and Custer splitting up his forces, that really contributed to this really huge victory for the Native Americans at this particular battle.
There was at one point, during the last stand which took place on that hill, where was that hill?
I think it's more towards the end.
Yeah,
Go forward. Here we
you
go.
know, Custer and his men find themselves in this small highland, and they're literally hiding behind their dead horses now.
Yeah.
Shooting from behind their dead horses. And this scene reminds me of 300.
Yes.
Because the Sioux, the Lakota, literally rained arrows down upon them. They shot their arrows up in the air. The horses could no longer protect them. It's like our arrows will blot out the sun, and we will fight in the shade.
Since you're bringing that up, it's making me think, is that, when you're talking about guys that are outmanned and outgunned and they're going to stand and fight to the very death, you bring up 300 comes up, the Alamo also comes up as well. However, they're the invading force.
Yeah.
I think that's the difference between the three.
Yes.
Because I think certain groups of people and certain historians like to put this in that same category as the Battle of Thermopylae and the Alamo. They like to put it in the same category, but yet they were the advancing force.
And it was an utter embarrassment for the United States military. Utter disaster. I think Chief Sitting Bull flees to Canada, I believe.
Yep.
And he's eventually caught.
Right.
This only solidified American resolve,
right,
to win these Indian wars, these little skirmishes that have gone on.
And the interesting thing is that you can go and look for one of these paintings, and when you look at any of these paintings or any of these documents that go along with it, they're seen as heroic quite often. The United States military, usually in some of these paintings, when you look at, he's surrounded, he's outmanned, he's outgunned, and even here, when you look at monuments itself, at the land and how it's preserved and how it's taken care of, and, the money.
And as you stated before, he graduated last from his class from West Point.
Right.
He made some really flawed military decisions.
Absolutely.
So.
But even when you talk about, this was, he made some flawed decisions, winds up getting all his guys killed.
Every single one.
Meanwhile, there's a monument for him and everything. And when you talk about monuments and the fact that people wanted to commemorate this particular site, of course, you got U.S. government money. Now, if you want to look at the Native American one, I don't know, I forget how long this has taken. However, it's still to this day, I think, under construction.
All my kids is that Mount Rushmore?
Yeah, no.
Is that like a new faith now?
Because it would have been done.
Yeah.
Right.
What is that, Geronimo, I believe, right?
I think so,
I forget who it was.
All right. Got peeps.
Oh, nice.
Yeah.